What is the best method of sale? Auction or private sale? Hello and welcome to my open home. I'm Lisa Stafford. And tonight I want to speak to you about, the different methods that people often talk about, and that they are auction and private sale, and which one is best. So to be honest with you, you really need to trust the agent that you have selected to help sell your home, because they are experienced, and what they are recommending to use is the method that they believe will get you the best result for your home. But here's where it is so important that you understand the process and that you are on the same page as them as to how that is actually going to get you the best result for your home. So I guess, to put it simply, an auction is the only way here in Victoria where you can actually sell a property and it will be an unconditional sale. And what that means is that there is no cooling off. There is no specific terms like subject to finance or subject to building and pest inspection. And, believe it or not, there's even some terms that can be subject to the sale of the purchaser's home. So as you can appreciate, an unconditional sale is quite valuable. On the other hand, from a buyer's perspective, an auction, in my opinion, is the best way that you can buy property, because it's very transparent. You can see the other buyers that you're up against. You can hear what they are bidding. So if you have the right strategy in place, you only need to be one bid ahead of them to be in a position to buy that home. So this is where it really comes down to understanding the different processes between an auction versus a private sale. So I guess, the thing about an auction as well is that you do have, like, as a seller, you've got a date that you are working towards where you're going to bring all the buyers together and on a certain date and a certain time for them to have an opportunity to buy your home. So again, you can see the market in action, all right? And if it's done right, then you can create that competition and often extract bids out of the buyers, and they will pay more than what they would have otherwise. So this is where it works really, really well on touching into that emotional power of buyers, and it gets the blood pumping, the adrenaline flowing, and it makes them make decisions that they wouldn't normally make. The whole auction situation can come across as being scary, and I think sometimes that can come down to a fear of failure. But let's face it, if you go through a 3 or 4 week campaign and the auction comes and goes, worst case scenario, if it doesn't sell at auction, it probably wouldn't have sold otherwise if you had gone through a private sale situation, in that time frame. Because that's one thing that an auction does very well. It really puts that deadline and that sense of urgency into buyers as well. All right. So in an auction situation, that unconditional sale period is for the 3 days prior to the auction. So from the Wednesday leading up to the Saturday auction, and then 3 clear business days after the auction date. So you've got that week of an unconditional sale situation. Okay. So most cases, if the property doesn't sell at auction, the agent will open it up on the Monday to try to extract some further interest from the buyers that you've obviously attracted throughout the sales campaign to get you a sale within those 3 clear business days after the auction, so it can still be an unconditional sale. All right. Now, with a private sale situation, this can work very well because it takes away that transparency. And what I mean by that is that, you can have, one buyer or one standout buyer that isn't really aware of what other buyers are prepared to pay. So sometimes you can get a difference between, 10, 20, 30, 40. I've even seen, hundreds of thousands of dollars between one buyer and the other. And in an auction situation, you probably wouldn't get that because, you only need to be better than the underbidder to secure the property. Whereas in a private sale situation, that transparency is taken away. So, you put your bid in because that's what the value you see in the property as a buyer, whereas you don't know whether there are any other buyers or whether there is any competition and what level that competition is at. So this is where it can get very tricky. And I guess, call it what you will, a private sale. There's other names for it, but in all honesty, they're all a private sale situation. You've got sale by set date, which I guess some people think is a close second to an auction because you've still got that date to work towards. But there's always that little clause, or offers prior, unless sold prior. But that sale by set date is really a situation where you've got a date and a time, but all offers need to be in by. So it does help to create that urgency and that I guess, definitive date that the property will most likely be sold on. But it's still that, you've got conditions. So your offers may be subject to finance, they may be subject to building and test, they may be subject to terms that aren't necessarily favourable. But you've got, I guess, that opportunity then as a seller to look at all the offers that you've got presented to you and then make a decision based on price and terms to what's going to suit you. Then you've got another, I guess, title for a private sale as expressions of interest. And, there's a lot of different, I guess, methods that agents can use to make it sound sexy. And, but at the end of the day, it's a private sale, okay? What's important is that you need to understand that every agency handles the process of a private sale differently, okay? And I think sometimes this is how agents can get a bad reputation, because I guess if you're buying a property and you've been through a situation where you haven't been able to successfully buy the property, you go to the next one, different agent, different property, and you would assume that's the same process. Well, it's not. So it's very important that you understand, and from a seller's perspective as well, it's really, really important that you ask these questions when you're interviewing your agent to understand what their process is for dealing with buyers and taking offers. Okay, because I'll give you an example of a couple of different scenarios that I experience regularly. All right, there's one in particular that where the first offer, or the buyer that presents the first offer, gets a second chance. All right, so in that situation, the agent will go back to all the other buyers that have been through the property and have shown interest and give them an opportunity to get involved. They'll say, we've got an offer that's been presented. If you're in a position to buy or wanting to buy this property, we suggest you do it now because the property will be sold by such and such a day. To which, if they do get other offers, and here's where the buyers need to rely on the information to be accurate, if they do get other offers, they will go back to that initial buyer that put in the first offer and give them another opportunity. And it will be something along the lines of, look, we've got other buyers that have put offers in. Some agents will disclose what those offers are, and some agents won't disclose what those other offers are. So you're relying on that information to be accurate. So it really puts that fear of, I guess, competition, that fear of loss, to make the buyers stretch further. Because remember, the agent is working for the seller. Okay, the agent is working for the seller, not the buyer. So it's their job to extract as much out of the buyers as they can. Okay, so this is a really, I guess, good way of doing that, by taking away that transparency and, making those buyers feel like they're competing against other buyers at a similar or better level to make them push harder. Okay, so that's one process. Another process is where all buyers that are showing interest and they're putting, offers forward, get as many chances as they like. Okay, so the agent will just go backwards and forwards until he is absolutely, positively sure that they're all done and dusted and that's the best that they've got, and then presents it to the vendor. And normally it's the highest price and the best terms. But in this situation, again, you've got two different variations of this, where some agents will disclose what the offers are to the other buyers, and some agents won't disclose what the offers are to the other buyers. So you can see how this gets a little bit confusing as well. I guess another process that some agents will use is a closed envelope process, where And this normally happens where an agency works that the agents are given an opportunity to compete against each other. And if they've got a buyer, they keep that offer very close to their chest, and they won't tell the other agents what the offer is, because they're hopeful that, you know, their buyer will be the ones that purchase the property, because they get a little bit of commission out of it, okay, if that happens. So that's where it becomes a closed envelope situation, where the listing agent will open the envelopes in front of the vendor, spread them all out, however many there are, and they'll make a decision. They'll get on the phones, and then they'll do those further negotiations with those buyers that are, you know, I guess the top three, if they've got that. So, you know, this is where I always recommend, as a seller, you understand what the agent's process is for taking offers and dealing with those buyers, so that you are on the same page, you're on the same team, and you understand how their experience and their process works for them. All right, because that's what they're trained in. Okay, that's how, you know, that they are trained to sell property, and that process is what they use to extract the best result. But you need to understand that as a seller, because, you know, it's your home and you need to have control of that situation. But if you understand that situation, it also gives you a little bit more power in your strategy once you get to that pointy end, okay? Because if you've got an understanding of how it works, then you can work with it. As a buyer, it's very, very important that before you go down that negotiation stage with an agent, you have a very clear understanding of what the rules are, okay? So that, yeah, like I said, your experience on one property purchase might be completely different to, you know, the next week's property purchase experience, and particularly if, you know, you're missing out week after week after week, it can get really, really frustrating when this is happening. So like I said before, I think this is sometimes, you know, it has a big impact on why agents get a bad reputation. So look, I hope that makes sense. I know there's a lot to take in, and it can really feel like a little bit of, you know, particularly from a buyer's perspective, it can really feel like a bit of a game playing sort of situation that you're entering into, which is kind of not fair, because let's face it, this is the biggest purchase, the biggest transaction you're about to make, and there's all these different things that can happen. And, you know, from a seller's perspective as well, you know, I've had situations change like that, where, you know, it might be a private sale to start with, and then we get a situation where there's, you know, multiple buyers. So to make sure that it's fair and it's transparent, some of the agents that I work with will then turn that campaign into an auction campaign to be fair to the buyers and to be transparent for everybody. So they will turn it into an auction campaign to provide the vendor with an unconditional sale, but also give the buyers an opportunity to do all their due diligence and be in a position to buy the property in a fair manner, okay? On the flip side, I've also had some agents where, you know, a really good strategy is, you know, if it's an auction campaign and, you know, if we're 2 or 3 weeks in and it's very clear that from the buyer feedback, we've only got one buyer, or we've got one standout buyer, that is that, like, you know, they're hundreds or, you know, tens of thousands of dollars more than the other buyers, then, you know, it's in their best interest and it's in the vendor's best interest to perhaps encourage a pre-auction offer, all right? And this is where, you know, if you're buying a property and an agent recommends that to you, then, you know, make sure that you're making the right decision, because sometimes it can be a little bit of a ploy to get the best result, all right? So, look, I hope that's been helpful. I hope it hasn't been too confusing. I know that there's a lot there to take in, but I guess, you know, that's where, if you need an expert by your side to help you through all of this stuff, you know, this is what I do. This is what I do for my clients every single day of every single week. So that's why I'm, you know, trying to help you by sharing this knowledge and sharing as much as I can to help you. So thank you so much for joining me tonight at my open home. And don't forget, I'm Lisa Stafford and I am your expert in real estate. Bye for now.